So I wasn't expecting to get the kind of responses um, in Messenger and on Discord that I got from, talking about being a villain. Um, wow, appreciate y'all. Um, I'm better these days. I was just, like me and my wife, we were talking about childhood traumas and stuff recently, and I don't know. I guess that's just thinking about what it was like back then and where I came from and all that. You know, again, that's why I got this little toy out because this toy ended up becoming something else. The reason I have it still isn't because it's a memory of because I was a bad guy and still am, but um, yeah, I guess since few of you were genuinely worried about me and shared some pretty personal things with me, I'm going to share something personal with you as well. In the process of talking about one of my favorite games of all time, Demon's Crest on the Super Nintendo, or the Super Famicom in Japan, or if you're really an otaku, I guess, the Sufami. Even I don't say that, and I'm a huge weeaboo nerd, so I mean, if you go past me in weebness, um, you might need to check yourself a little bit because I'm a huge nerd. But anyway, because of the aforementioned video, growing up having to be the bad guys all the time, there was this game series that came out on the original 4-color Game Boy, and it's this helicopter, little, 128 by 128 pixel screen. Seriously, that's not a helicopter. That is a plane flying out of March Air Force Base, probably training a new pilot in a drop ship that has really big freaking engines and is flying really low to the ground to test the pilots to make sure they're paying attention to the altimeter. I live in a desert next to an air base and try to record videos outside because I'm an idiot. Anyway, it just so happens that Gargoyle's Quest is a game series where you play as a red armor, the most dickish of all video game enemies. From the Makaimura series, or Ghosts and Goblins, or Ghouls and Ghosts, and all its many iterations, there are always red armors, these winged red gargoyles with these cone head skulls, and just, everything about them is just miserable to look at. The very sight of one always induces so many feelings of dread and vexation and frustration and rage, and maybe the first time that I ever cussed as a child was because of red armors in the Makaimura games. But then along comes Gargoyle's Quest, a Capcom game for the Game Boy, where you get to play as a red armor named Firebrand. I never felt represented in a video game as a child, quite frankly. There was no reason for me to try and aspire to be some grand, holy hero wielding a sword of light, because I was taught that would never be me. At the time, mind you. So, when it's like, hey, you get to play a game as a long, clawed, taloned gargoyle who can fly, and one of his breath attacks is to hack up a nasty, disgusting, viscous wad of demon phlegm as one of his breath attacks. And if you spit his nasty demon phlegm onto the wall, you can dig your long, gangly nails into it and wall climb on spikes. This game is awesome. See, we were just talking in Solaris about how we're the 4 Ninja Turtles, apparently, and we all seem to really perfectly represent the 4 humors of Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello. And screw this truck, I don't know what it is, but you can F off too, straight to the demon realm or the ghoul realm where these games take place. You see, the Makaimura games are always about, oh, the portal to the Ghoul realm was opened and all these things are coming into King Arthur's kingdom. Gargoyle's Quest was a game that you play as a demon in the Ghoul realm. There's no good guys here. Everyone is bad. And the goal of the game is to be badder than all the other bad guys. You ever see Jet Li's The One? Remember the ending to that? Yeah. That's what it's like. And I was like, this is my jam. As a young 8-year-old playing on various car trips in the back of the Suburban with my little light boy thing, you know. Always had a bunch of batteries with me so I could play on that thing. And then inevitably came, I'm sorry, the Ninja Turtle thing. Leonardo's whole thing is phlegm. I have really bad post-nasal drip, actually. And so I have always, my whole life, been hacking up wads of phlegm and mucus, and people don't really like that. It just so happens that I happen to play a game that glorified that as a weapon and a utility tool. And ever since then, I was like, yeah, it's just part of who I am. I don't feel so bad about that. I don't really care if people can't deal with it or not. It is who I am. Very cathartic to play these games as a kid. And then Gargoyle's Quest 2 on the NES, the 8-bit Famicom. Oh, what a fantastic game. It was just Gargoyle's Quest, but on the TV screen in full color, with better sound and harder levels. Loved that game too. One of my favorite memories, even as I was doing it, I thought to myself, this is so stupid and childish and dumb. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to. For some reason, I think I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life, and here we are. I still remember it. I had just gotten to the very last boss at the end of Gargoyle's Quest 2 on the NES. And I got a piece of paper. I got out both a graphite pencil and a mechanical pencil. And I drew these big bubble letters with the mechanical pencil first and then shaded it in with the graphite pencil afterwards. And I made a sign. I got some tape. And I posted it on my door. And it was saying, like, you know, do not knock. Please don't bother me. I'm fighting the last boss in Gargoyle's Quest 2. And I put that on my door. And I went inside and I fought that last boss. And we had this like old video camcorder that used VHS tapes. It was like $1,200 when it first came out back in the 80s. It had a tripod, so I set it up in front of the TV to record myself beating Gargoyle's Quest 2, just recording the raw TV footage with a big old VHS camera on a tripod, just so that I could go back and watch the last boss fight whenever I wanted. Yeah, I guess I've always kind of done this. But there was something thrilling about it being the very first time I fought that boss, and that I was recording myself, and, you know, I put a sign up just like, don't bother me, don't make any frickin' noise and sound in the background. You know, I've always had that pet peeve, I guess. Most of you probably don't even care. I do, though. But anyway, just wanted to share that little tidbit of my life as a kid. And then eventually, after we moved off Elsinore, that's when we moved to the house in Grand Terrace. That was the first time I saw Demon's Crest at the Blockbuster. And immediately I knew it was the Super Nintendo version of Gargoyle's Quest. Finally, after all these years. And looking at the back of the box for the first time, it was just like, oh my gosh, this game looks gorgeous. It looks so amazing. Even though it's so macabre and dark and sinister, it just drew me in, like, really, really intensely. Strange, considering that, you know, I came from a Christian household, and back then, and even to this day, I still love Jesus Christ. But there was, it was just new, you know. It was this thing that I never got to experience or see before. So, you know, I was thankful that when you rent something from Blockbuster, it's just a nondescript box, and maybe your parents don't actually look at what the person's putting in the box. And thankfully, my parents never did. So I'm finally getting to play the Super Nintendo version of Demon's Crest. You get to play Firebrand on the Super Nintendo, man. And Demon's Crest is, in my opinion, my genuine opinion, not just one of the best Super Nintendo games of all time. It is a top 25 video game of all time on any console, regardless of genre. Demon's Crest is like peak video game design. It should be in case studies for how to make a good game. They start you off with something that no Metroid game has ever done for some freaking reason, or any other game of its ilk. In all the previous games, you had to earn better wings that had better stamina, and by the end of the game, you would have an unlimited flight ability. Demon's Crest starts you off with an unlimited flight ability in the tutorial boss fight, where you learn that you better learn how to fly. Just press the jump button mid-jump. You will begin flapping your wings, and you will completely maintain your horizontal location on the screen while you're able to freely move to the left or right. Oh, that dragon is barfing fire and engulfing the floor in flames for like 5 seconds. That doesn't mean anything to me. I can fly. And then you barf your fire breath into its face until it keels over onto the ground, and entire chunks of its flesh start peeling off as charcoal cinders fall to the floor. It's like, oh man, this is brutal. And then as you exit the Colosseum, the dragon sticks its head out, breaking its own horns through the doorway so that it can continue trying to kill you. And you, alright, well, again, tutorial on how to fly. The dragon cannot move its head anymore, so you can just jump up into the air and stay on the right side of the screen and shoot fireballs at it from afar, and it can't hurt you. And then the rest of the flesh on its face melts off as the head breaks off from the neck and the spinal cord, and you can see the guts and the interior inside as its screaming, crying skull melts into a puddle and then explodes. And then there's those bleached, perfect white skeletal hands clasping upon a blood orb. And so you take it, and it plays that you picked up a special item sound, which is just kind of like a pipe organ being played by Death himself. It sounds beautiful in just how haunting it is. The item pickup sound is creepy and disturbing, yet so beautiful. And then the rest of the music for that first stage, as you're going through everything, again, it's jarring because there's something about it that is just so creepily sinister, and yet it will never leave your mind after the first time it scars its way into your neurons. Something about it will make it stay there forever. You will always think about it. Becomes something that soothes you. It's the only place you've ever felt the video game world that was supposed to feel oppressive felt comfortable to you. It's like that song Eternal Loop. All I ever knew was people trying to break me, so all I wanted to do was break everyone around me. That was a very real, deep feeling inside of me as a child, although I never acted on it in reality because I knew it was wrong to do so. But in this game, I could do that. I could break every single window in the town or the city, and then eventually my desire to keep jumping and headbutting out window panes with my indestructible skull also became something that this is going to get rewarded too, because look, Here's a mini game where you have to break skulls that come out of the wall, a la whack-a-mole. That thing you've been practicing doing just because you have such an intense desire to physically break and destroy things all the time. You get rewarded for even that now. What makes Demon's Crest so much different than the other games in the series, though, is the elemental crests. You know, you get the Crest of Earth first. It takes away your wings, but turns you into a beast on the ground. There's the Crest of Air, which weakens your attack power, but makes you lithe, nimble, and able to fly upwards the first time you're ever able to actually gain altitude. Press the A button to gain elevation and ascend. Never been able to do that before. Then the Crest of Water lets you swim, breathe water. Then you get all the different pieces of the Crest of Fire, like the Buster thing that lets you break blocks, the Tornado Breath that lets you barf out platforms that you can stand on. The Claw comes back, letting you barf your nasty, bloody demon phlegm onto walls so that you can grip your talons and nails into them. I wonder why I have long nails still to this day. People ask me if these are fake all the time. No, these are my actual nails. They're about as thick as an American dime and harder than diamonds because I've broken them 1 billion times. Never had a hangnail before, by the way. Just saying. Playing through these games, and especially Demon's Crest, I think that, well, I know it became the basis of the way I design everything, basically. And, you know, that goes to video game design documentation, writing books, screenplays, you know, writing things for the stage. You know, I've done all of that. But I think, you know, people always ask me, like, did you write this book intending it to be turned into a video game or a movie? I've been asked that by so many people, and it's like, well, that's not the intention. It just so happens that I design, like, worlds and concepts and things like that based on, you know, like the elemental archetype type of thing. It's just, that's how I do character personalities and things of that nature. It all stemmed from that. But for a much larger reason, I look back so fondly on all of this, and hopefully I'll get into it without getting too drunk and forgetting to mention it. Before I stop talking about Demon's Crest, I have to mention the Dark Demon fight, because it is the hardest boss I have ever fought in any video game in my freaking life. I have been playing video games since I was 2 years old on the Commodore 64. I am 39. I have been playing video games for a long time. I started the moment I was able to understand that my fingers were causing things on the screen to change, and I have never stopped. In the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of video games that I have played, most to completion, I have never fought a more brutal, difficult, and just crap your skeleton out of your butt hard boss than the Dark Demon in Demon's Crest. It's a secret optional boss. You don't have to fight it, and you're only given the option to do so if you 100% clear the game, which is pretty difficult, actually. It's not impossible, but your first time through, learning the muscle memory and the timing of how to play a game that, to be honest, controls tight sometimes and other times doesn't, it's weird. It's not like Mega Man X, for example, which I think is the tightest controlling video game of all time. 1, 2, and 3 on the Super Nintendo. Those, you press the button, the thing you want to happen happens immediately, exactly how you want it to happen. Demon's Crest, not so much like that. It can be a little clunky sometimes. There can be some delays before what you want to happen after you press the button. It's kind of like a Dark Souls game. And I will attest right now that the Dark Demon is more difficult for, not just for a Super Nintendo game, I mean for a game period, more difficult than any boss in any Souls game, Bloodborne, any like fan mods for extra difficult bosses, any of that crap. The Dark Demon is harder than any of that. It will make you cry blood. You know, if you don't believe me, play it yourself. Put in a special password and just off the bat, download the ROM, go play it. Go fight the Dark Demon. You can access it from the world map the second you put in the special password that gives you every single crest, including the plot crest, the Crest of Heaven. But that was the thing that I guess was interesting to me, is like, why would a demon be interested in the Crest of Heaven? That, you know, idiosyncrasy just threw a wrench into the gears of my mind. It was weird, and I didn't quite understand it. But that human desire to fill in the blanks for things that we don't understand, I think is where the story in my mind must have first spawned that day I was in the shower with my little Fisher-Price audio cassette tape player blasting the Transformers soundtrack. I liked thinking in the shower. I liked listening to music in the shower because I would see things. The stories in my mind that I was unable to express because I started developing self-mutism because every single time I talked I got into trouble. That all started forming into characters and stories in my mind. I had this little personal voice recorder with mini audio cassette tapes when I was a kid, and anytime a video game had like a BGM sound test in it, I would go record the soundtrack for the game, and then I would like go through the different songs and just start like writing scenes in my head. You know, close the door to my room and start, you know, just like acting out my character's lines, emoting as them. I can actually cry on command. You know, that took, it took like a year to learn, but I think it actually took me about 8 years to be able to just do it. And that's been necessary for me to create these characters and to distill my emotions into them to hopefully get my point across. Screw you, garbage truck. Oh, one of my hairs is on my finger. Yes, thanks, garbage truck. Thanks for being late and coming on a Sunday when you're not supposed to. Anyway, this little toy right here. Became a blueprint for what my new hero would look like. Although this story originally began as something much different than what it eventually became, I had continued to just write it in my head for my entire life. Even when I was in basic training, I distinctly remember, you know, like, I had this little sheet of paper where I was like going over what I wanted my food budget to be and all that other kind of stuff, and that was the first time that I ever actually drew Dios, the name given to a sentient suit of armor that has existed since the dawn of time, created by the breath of God in the waters of his heavenly kingdom. Dios is a living suit of armor. That was the character that I based that design model off of. And the story, as I always intended it, was that Dios was kind of like this explanation for unexplainable things throughout human history. You know, like Alexander the Great, for example. The reason, quote unquote, the reason Alexander the Great was able to conquer the known world at the time is because he was one of Dios's pilots. King Arthur, same thing. King Arthur was also one of Dios's pilots. And just, Genghis Khan, pretty much Nobunaga Oda. Dios was just like my answer for like, here's why these certain people were, for some reason, able to conquer massive chunks of the entire world and have legendary stories told about them even to this day. But Dios was always this thing that, had to be scrubbed. No one was allowed to know about him, basically. That was kind of like how Dios as a character began and how he started in my mind. And, starting originally from a fire-breathing, leathery-winged demon and, eventually turning into a biomechanical suit of holy armor with, organic feathery wings, which I think is cool. I don't know why. I just think adding something organic to something that's otherwise completely mechanical is cool. That's just me, though. I don't know. But eventually I realized that I had to tell this story in a certain time period. Eventually I ended up actually writing those prequels, which were, kind of just a series of vignettes, more or less, because I just wanted to actually write those things that Dios had done in the past. And very much like, you ever seen My Hero Academia? Kind of like a one-for-all thing. I wrote this long before this, but I thought of it just kind of like downloading data into your brain from the Matrix type of deal. Is that anyone who pilots Dios has all of the memories and experiences of past pilots put into their brain and into their mind. And the further down the line you go throughout time, Dios's pilots become more and more mentally unstable, because you kind of become unsure of, who am I? I have the memories and experiences of like 40 different people inside of me, and I don't know who I actually am anymore. And so I do intend to release part of this story for free. It's many books, but maybe here I'll give you a little introduction into my mind and my life and the things that I create. I decided to begin this story with a special song because I write everything to music. The acoustic version of June's Song by Coheed and Cambria. The story begins with a very heavily armored black van riding through Death Valley, cutting off of the main road and riding toward the hills. A Jinro squad emerges out from the back. Red goggles in their gas masks lighting up as they enter into a cave at the base of the hills. Deep inside, there is an ornate black metal door, engraved with rotting pomegranates. A crimson light peeks through the crack between the two panels, and it's only opened a short way before the shock troopers begin vomiting inside of their masks and are unable to enter and see. They can't handle what's going on in there. And I'm not going to describe that to you, actually, because it's not good. And pretty much anyone who's ever read it was like, I didn't know if I wanted to read this book or if it's going to start this way, which was good. That's what I wanted to hear. If you can't handle what happens in the intro, you aren't going to be able to handle the rest of this story. It's not fun or pretty. SWAT van goes back into Las Vegas. Goes to a club where there is a bouncer working at his sister's bar named Love Juice. Valesti. Why do you think I favor that name still? Named the protagonist of the central part of my life's work. The same thing. Apparently when I get nervous, my face itches. I didn't realize that about myself, but I'm realizing it right now. Valesti is asked by Curtis, who is a multi-dimensional time cop who I have put Curtis in every book I've ever written, even when it's not connected to this universe. Curtis is just my muse. He's a bad cop. But Curtis asks Valesti to come with him into the Chaos Trigger Nest. And it's like, yeah, you remember what happened last time in San Francisco when we did that? You know how that part of California is not there anymore? Yeah, maybe not, dude. So he shows Val footage of what's going on inside there. Then he puts on his boots and his trench coat and gets in the van. You see Chainsaw Man? I really liked the first episode of Chainsaw Man because it reminded me so much of when Valesti goes into the nest in chapter 2 and smiles as his body and his flesh are torn and gnawed apart by the creatures inside. And then they all explode in a fountain of blood as enmity emerges. Oh gosh. Yeah, I named it Enmity. I played Final Fantasy XI, okay? What does Enmity look like? I want you to imagine a king behemoth standing on its hind legs, hunched over, with a golden xenomorph-style visor from the Alien franchise, and a armored, spiked tail with a flail at the end of it. From snout to tail tip, it is roughly 150 feet in length. And the first thing it does is take its nasty, disgusting, germ-infested claws and shoves it straight into its own armored plate and rips it apart, clawing off its flesh to reveal the eyes underneath, just so that it can watch all the blood that it's about to spill. I don't remember the name of the mix, but it's Carmina o Fortuna remixed in like a really kind of a horrifying gothic chant style, like EDM death metal. Maybe I'll post it. But I used that song, and that was the moment that I decided I am going to take every last shred of hate and violence and malice and rage and fury that I have inside of me, and I'm going to distill it down into about 8 paragraphs. And I did. It felt good because I knew what was supposed to happen after that. After the enmity has hollowed out the inside of this mountain, tearing out parts of the ceiling until the mountain collapses partway into itself. And in the massive football arena stadium, where all of its denizens are now slowly leaking and dripping as a viscous, vile ooze full of organs and teeth and bone fragments and hair down into the pitch until it is waist deep with a sludgy swamp of crimson gore. And there in the middle of it all, on a solid white platform, there is a girl with white fur, white hair, not a speck of blood upon her, completely naked. And as the enmity walks towards her, leaning down as its gargling, snarling, hissing breath pierces out from between its blood-stained golden teeth, she says nothing, because all words are lies, and touches the crest on his forehead, and the beast vanishes instantly. And then there's only Valesti left standing, waist deep, also completely naked, as a lance of pearlescent moonlight illuminates the both of them. That's how that story begins. Then I wrote 5 more books after that, but that's how it begins. Thing is that to me, I guess, was a fairy tale in my mind. It's what I always wanted, was someone who could look at me, see the absolute darkness inside of me, and not only accept it, but simultaneously push all of it away with just a mere touch of her hand. And then I ended up actually getting that when I met my wife. No person I will ever meet in my life will have so easily and so instantaneously expunged so much darkness from inside of me. But anyway, yeah, there's 40 minutes to describe my life from like 8 years old until now. I think that's pretty good. Anyway, Valesti ends up becoming Dios's next pilot. And, the girl that he saves and rescued is, well, I'm not going to say that. She is important to the bad guys. I'll say that. And so as they attempt to get her back, that is the first time, as far as the continuity of this story in the world that I have created, the first time in about 4,000 years that Dios has ever decided to allow someone else to pilot him and to fight for humanity again. And then stuff happens. But anyway, yeah, there you go. The reason that, that stuff in my past, I don't look back on it with bad or negative memories. I just look back on it as matter of factly as I can, because it is what happened to me. That is my life. But that's just what I eventually was able to turn it into. Still writing it, by the way. I have one more book before this entire story is finally done, and probably move on to writing children's books after that, actually. I'm aware how weird that sounds after everything I just said. But hey, if R.L. Stine can do it, make Goosebumps books, I can do something good too, man. I just gotta be like Parappa the Rapper, man. I gotta believe. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for your time. Appreciate y'all. Play Demon's Crest. It's really good. It's awesome. One of my favorite games of all time. Even if you don't have a persecution or a villain complex, I still think it's an awesome game. Everything about it's rad. God bless y'all. Hope you have a good one.